We return to our top story, and this is Boris Johnson. Fresh lockdown party investigations. It just seems to be party.
Yeah, this is actually number 18 that's come to light. And the question this morning is whether the party could be over for the Prime Minister. Let's bring in Ben Harris-Quinney. He's chairman of the world's oldest Conservative think tank, the Group. A very good morning to you. Look, Eamon and I are sensing, at least from our email inbox and from general public views on Twitter, that there isn't the same outrage at this. Have we become fatigued by Partygate, or do we think that this isn't quite as bad as some of the other transgressions he's been accused of?
No, I think it is, but I think it's sort of reached saturation point. I mean, if another 10 parties are announced, what difference does it really make at this point? I think that there is a public understanding and a widespread understanding now that this has been an endemic problem going on in number 10. And that is why there is an investigation, a formal investigation into it. And, you know, whilst these revelations, I think, will continue to drip out, what most people are waiting for, whether they are in Boris's favour or not, is that report, and then assessing whether that report has gone into the full detail or not, and obviously who the public deem to be responsible for it. But what I think is most interesting and often missed, or you've been alluding to it on GB News, is that the Prime Minister's unfavourability ratings started dropping long before any of the parties were revealed, and by a much more significant margin than the parties have caused. And I think it started dropping for other reasons than the parties, because, you know, Boris wasn't delivering on many of those 2019 pledges. You know, we're not seeing action on immigration, cost of living is spiking. And I think generally there's a feeling that Boris and the Conservative Party have not been doing the Conservative things they were elected to do. And that's why you had this so-called Operation Red Meat to try and pacify some of those people and to do some...
Ben, let's get a bit of red meat of our own here and get straight to the point. The Group, as I understand it, it's the oldest Conservative think tank, yeah?
That's right, yeah.
Now, Ben, could I ask you, whatever the rights and wrongs of all of this, your members, the people who you mix with, the people who vote Conservative, do they think that Boris Johnson has behaviour coming for a Conservative Prime Minister? Has he got the behaviour, the standards that you would expect of a Conservative Prime Minister?
The short answer to that is no. I think people are very angry, but the question that I most often hear asked in small c Conservative circles is, it's one thing for Boris to consider his own position, and he knows better than anyone, better than Sue Gray, what his actions have been and what's been going on in Downing Street, and whether his position is tenable as a result. But in terms of forcing his hand externally, what most small c Conservatives are saying is, well, yes, you can remove Boris Johnson as Prime Minister, but there's no point doing that if he's merely replaced by a Liz Truss, because I think this all speaks to a deeper problem in the Conservative Party. We've had now...
Oh. Now, has Ben completely gone away there? Because he was very interesting. Has he completely gone away?
Oh, what a shame. It was an interesting point he was making about who would succeed Boris Johnson if he was to stand down. And at the moment, it looks very much like we would need somebody to be an international statesman on the global stage when we're facing the threat of, people are dubbing it, World War III. Would Liz Truss be the right person to deter
let's
Vladimir
find out,
Putin? Let's find out.
He joins us again. Ben, you were just making the point about no point replacing Boris Johnson if it was just to be with a Liz Truss, who I'm assuming you're thinking doesn't have the standing that you would require, or the cut-through factor.
Well, no, I think it's more that she's not a genuine Conservative, and what brought down Cameron and May was essentially that they presented themselves as being the saviour of conservatism. You know, many people remember the headlines about Theresa May, the new Iron Lady, and that sort of thing, dubbing herself the next Thatcher, and Boris has kind of done the same thing with Winston Churchill. But then a few years later, they're exposed to be just another continuation of the Blairite metropolitan liberal way of doing things. And I think certainly Brexit was a signal that people wanted to see things done very differently. And if you look at where, in latest polls, if you look at where those 2019 votes are disappearing to, most of them are not actually disappearing to the Labour Party. They're disappearing back to none of the above. We're not going to vote for any party anymore. And those are the people that voted Brexit, that hadn't voted for a very long time. They backed Boris in 2019 because they thought Boris was a different colour of politician, someone that was actually going to deliver real change. And I think, as I say, the biggest element of dissatisfaction is not the parties, it's that he hasn't delivered on that mandate. And so there's no point just changing the leader of the Conservative Party to someone else who's another phony Conservative. I think the Conservative Party needs to undergo a major reform agenda to reconnect it with a genuine base. Because, again, what happened to Cameron and May was when they got into a crisis, they were attacked from both the left and the right because they didn't have a base. And that same thing is now happening to Boris Johnson. David Davis, very much a Brexiteer, very much on the right of the Conservative Party, as is Andrew Bridgen. And they've been the biggest critics, really, of Boris from within his own party. And so if the Conservative Party, I think, is going to win the next election, it needs a leader that has a real base behind it, has a real energy.
Do you have a name in mind there?
Well, that's the problem, I think, with to be quite honest with you, I think there are a lot of people who want Boris gone, but they don't have a name in mind, or there isn't a plausible name in mind, and that's why I think he's managed to cling on until now. There are a number of people that I think would fulfill that criteria, but the process is very undemocratic in the sense that what usually happens is members of Parliament whittle it down to a final two, and then the members get to decide just on two candidates.
Put you under some pressure. If you had to pick one name, though, go for it right now. Who would you choose if it wasn't Boris?
I would go for Graham Brady. Because I think he offers a completely different thing to Boris. He offers stability. I think he's trusted in the parliamentary party and in the membership. And I think if he pitched himself as a reform agenda candidate, someone that's going to democratise the Conservative Party in time for the next election, put it back in touch with a base and a movement, and is a sort of gold standard Conservative, if you like. People know what he's all about and what he's going to do when he's in office. That's who I would go for.
OK, got to leave it there, Ben. Absolutely fascinating listening to you. Whether anybody in the general world will even have a clue who Graham Brady is. I mean, obviously, we all know who you're talking about there, but does he have that cut through that Boris Johnson had? Ben, really appreciate it. That's Ben Harris-Quinney. He is the chairman of the Bow Group, the oldest Conservative think tank. So some good stuff there. Gold standard Conservatives and phony Conservatives.
Yeah, interesting language from them. Look.